any particular problem for me.
This is an oral history interview for Southwestern Yacht Club with Mr. Hal Russell on August the 29th, 2001. And we're going to just talk about your remembrances of the club and some of the things that you most enjoy doing around here. And I guess for starters, we might say, how did you get to Southwestern Yacht Club?
Well, I was, this was back in 1966 it was, and I had been, I got a lot of background as far as going to sea is concerned. I was in the Merchant Marine and in the Navy.
Oh, I want to hear about that.
But that was a little before coming here. At the time, I was working for General Dynamics Astronautics, like a lot of other people, on the Atlas and Centaur project. And I discovered sailing through a Naval Reserve buddy of mine who belonged to the Convair Sailing Club. At the time, they sailed Victories.
Yeah.
And I'd go out with him occasionally. That's how I got to be aware of the fact that there even were yacht clubs around. And this was in like say 65, 66. And although I'd gone to sea a lot, I was an engineer, still am, and I never sailed while I was at sea, working there, or when I was going to school. I went to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and we had a very excellent sailing team. But I was not part of it. I was too busy trying to get through. Anyway, and that was a long time before that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I did become interested in sailing, and I thought, well, I would like to have a boat, small boat, and I did buy a little Lido 14 about that time.
That was your first boat?
That was my first boat, and then it became, leaving it in the driveway was kind of a problem. So I decided that I probably had enough interest that it would be worthwhile joining a yacht club. And I looked into San Diego Yacht Club and Southwestern here. San Diego was a little bit more expensive at the time. The club would have cost me $750 to join. And I could get over here. I think I was the last person to join here for $300. But that was a lot of money in those days.
It was indeed.
Yeah.
And this was 1966?
66, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, I was fortunate enough to find somebody who would sponsor me here, and I'm very, very, very satisfied that I did. I think it was the right thing to do. Even though I have a lot of friends over at San Diego Yacht Club. In fact, my daughter belongs over there. But I've never felt really sorry that I made this decision. At the time, when Southwestern Yacht Club was predominantly fishermen. I guess that's just the background of the club, how it got started to begin with, and there was a very small cadre of sailors here at the time. There was when I got here, there was Rob Batcher and Roy Benstead and Sam Arden. About probably another half a dozen or so that made up the when you go to Sail Fleet meeting, there was probably a dozen people there.
But a lot of good sailors there.
Yeah, good sailors. But we were a small group, and certainly very much in the minority. But that was just the nature of the club at that time. You'd look out over the docks, and you wouldn't see very many masts at all.
Yeah. It was interesting because it originally started with the sailboat people, with the Charters Martin way back in 1925, and then it had this evolution into.
Yeah, I'm not. The how it got involved so heavily in sailing, in fishing, I don't know, but that was the way it was when I got here anyhow.
What sort of things did Sail Fleet do then?
Well, our biggest activity of the year was the Ensenada race, the little Ensenada, San Diego Ensenada. And it had been, I don't remember the exact year it started, but it was a big event. It was probably our biggest event. I do remember, I think it was almost the first Sail Fleet meeting I went to. We were coming up on the time for the Ensenada race, and our good friend John Tanner, who had always been very supportive of the race, I understood from that time, and is still very supportive of all the things that the sailors do here. God bless John. He came to the meeting, and of course he wasn't a sailor, but he came to the meeting, and I didn't know who he was or the background or anything like that, and he proceeded to castigate the Sail Fleet people because they weren't picking up the ball and running with it and putting this race together. I guess at that time John had actually put together the brochures and paid for them himself and done a lot of things. And I couldn't understand what was going on. As a complete novice, I was.
In the first meeting.
I think it was the first, maybe the second meeting, but it was. I was just flabbergasted. And John was just trying to get people off their duff to get them to do the work that had to be done, because it took a lot of work to run that race. And it was somewhat of an eye opener for me at that time. Since that time, I've run the Ensenada race a couple of times as General Race Committee Chairman, and that I've assisted with it a number of times, doing results over the years, and tried to hold up my end. And maybe it was because I heard John chew everybody out that night.
You remembered that?
I remembered it well. But it was. We all had a small group of people, and of course, now in those days, we had the old clubhouse over on the corner of the what's now the small boat area, and it was. That's another story. We'll talk about that later. The clubhouse.
Yeah, the clubhouse.
But the Sail Fleet was a good bunch of people, and we had. A lot of fun, and we had I'd say maybe one or maybe two races a month. A lot of times we would work with we were in the San Diego handicap fleet primarily. There was some class racing, but almost everybody that was active was in San Diego handicap fleet. Bob Batcher was in the OR fleet, the ocean racing fleet. He raced with the big boys. But the majority of us were getting out there and hoping we could find the start line, let alone the finish line.
Well, it's a good way to start, with your friends.
Yeah.
Did you race with any particular people, or did you kind of buddy up?
Well, shortly after I joined, we had one very active class fleet here, and that was the Coronado 25s. That was Roy Bedstead and Jim Brown. Oh gosh, we had about 6 boats, I believe, that were, and we used to have class races for the Coronado 25. And so I looked onto that and looked at that and said, geez, that's a lot nicer boat than a Lido 14. Maybe I ought to do something about that. So in about mid-1967, I found a Coronado 25 that was about 6 months old, that was
But
for
someone
sale.
got it and
Yeah.
decided they
Yeah,
couldn't.
like a lot of people, they buy a boat and then say, well,
Change their
it's
mind.
just not for me. So I bought Belizza back there in late, in mid-'67, guess it was.
You want to spell Belizza?
Beleza. It's Portuguese for beautiful.
Okay, I knew it had to be something
Yeah.
special, yeah. Great.
And I've still got it. And she's still beautiful.
Is that the one you race in now, on Wednesday?
I go out on Wednesdays, I just go out for sailing.
But that's still Belizza?
It's still the same one, yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah, but it's probably the most expensive Coronado 25 in the world by now.
For all the work you had done on it.
Yeah, well, you just can't have a boat for 30-some years without putting a lot into
Oh,
it.
for sure.
Anyhow, so when I started racing, why I was actually racing with my own boat, Coronado 25, and trying to keep up with Roy. That was hard to do.
Yeah. Well, Roy must have really enjoyed you because he couldn't believe that I hadn't interviewed you.
Oh, well, I'm not very active recently here. I probably haven't pulled my own weight for the last 20 years at the club, but before that time I was fairly active, doing a lot of things. But this way it goes.
Yep.
Anyway, so I have raced with other people on their boats from time to time, accrued for them, but primarily my racing activities were on my own boat for about 3-4 years, and then
And you did the Ensenada race?
yeah, I did the Ensenada race in I think I did it in '67. That was my first Ensenada race. And I think I got a picture at home that Roy gave me with me crossing the finish line.
Oh, we could use that if we could borrow
Well,
it.
the picture is so faded.
Was it a newspaper?
No, it was a color picture that Roy took. And in fact, at one point he gave me the slide of it. Maybe I can find the slide somewhere.
Because when this goes in the mooring line, it's nice to
Yeah.
have a picture of it.
Yeah.
And you know, they don't come out in color in the mooring line anyhow.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but the one that I've got up on my wall is so faded. I have to look real hard at it to even see the boat. You know?
that's what happens over the years. Yeah. So that was crossing the finish line.
Yeah.
Now I know you guys are all too modest to tell me any special things that made you feel real good, but I always ask if you have a remembrance of what was the most good feeling kind of race or award or anything that you received.
I have a lot of good feelings of many times. It's usually it was in the act of being a race administrator or a race participant, but not a racer. I think I've been involved in the Ensenada race probably a dozen times, and yet only about 4 times that was when I was racing. Other times I was doing
Running the race.
either general race committee chairman or doing the results. And though there was a lot of work running that race,
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there still is. It's hard dealing with the Mexicans sometimes. They depends on how they feel when you want to run the race, how much grief they give you. And the other activity that came along later on that was pretty big for us for a long while was the Marina del Rey to San Diego race, and I was the general race committee chairman on that a couple of times. I participated in it 3-4 times, something like that, in my own boat, and I've crewed on other people's boats maybe 3 or 4 times on that race. And I know that was a real big deal, and it was took an awful lot of work to run that race, because there was a lot of coordination that had to go on between the people here and the people up at Windjammers. I know that I think it was the second year of the race that Roy ran it. Roy or Doc Disraeli. I don't remember who ran it the first year, but I think I ran it the second, third year.
And that was our race. We originated that and got it all going.
Yeah, well, it was originated by, I think Roy Benstead and John Linsky up there kind of hatched the thing, and it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work. I know that when I'd have to go up, to go up for meetings, we'd had about once a month up there, where I'd fly up, and Linsky would meet me at the airport and drive me over to the club and bring me back so I could catch a plane back that night. It was pretty hairy. And then trying to get all the information on the boats so that you could prepare it for the results was a real pain. Well, hard work. I guess I got to be careful how I phrase it. But
it is a pain sometimes.
But I know that when we were running 300, 350. I think the tops was about 370 boats or something like that one year.
It was amazing.
And I did results for about 6 years on that. Of course, in those days, we were doing them by hand.
No computer.
No computer. Yeah, the computers didn't come into the scene until about, I think it was late 70s. We acquired or had use of a real old 8K machine. Can't believe that you did it with that kind of memory. It was. I'm trying to remember that. One of our life members here now had the machine or acquired it from work or something like that, and he was able to put together a program that I ran, and then I enhanced the program a little bit, but it was really limited what we could do there. And I think it was up until about 83 or so. I just was looking through some of my stuff here, and I found I had a folder that still had some of the old programs in it.
Oh.
I couldn't believe that they were still around. These were real old stuff. This was some of the. I think it was 83 was the dates on some of these here. But these were some of the programs that we used to run, and I look at it and I can hardly believe that they did it.
Has Dick Green seen these? Has Dick Green seen these?
I don't know. Dick's got a far more sophisticated program now, and
but I mean, he'd probably love to see this the way it was being done.
These are some of these things. If there was any place that anybody wanted to keep some of this stuff, these were some of the programs we used, and here was the way the results would come out. This was the results we did in '83 for the Little Ensenada. And they were. Well, this was what went in the packet. This was packet information, and then we get results information. I've got it in here somewhere.
You won't believe this, but last night in the meeting, one of the main things that we were wringing our hands about is that a whole lot of the trophies aren't up to date, and we don't know who won them because we don't have all of this, because they dumped it. They've had people here, secretaries, who cleaned the files, and it's gone. So I think that Al Seaver would love to look at this, because there just might be something in here that would really help him.
I kept results for the Marina Del Rey race for quite a few years, but it got to be too much of a problem for me at home,
Yeah.
and I dumped it too, you know. And I figured, well, I got it at the club, so I don't need it here.
I think we're in better shape on Marina Del Rey. It's Ensenada, just certain years that, and I don't remember which years they
Yeah,
were.
well, it turns out that most of this stuff here is the programs, not the results. Now this was here were the finish results in Marina Del Rey in 1982 that we did. But you know, I used to have an awful lot more, but I just couldn't keep it around. And in fact, I'm surprised that's still there. It was just that it was on a top shelf in a closet somewhere.
Well, what we're trying to do is get it all up to date and then get it on disc, so that, you know, that all the paper doesn't have to be saved anymore. But
there's an awful lot to transfer to disc.
If you don't mind lending it, maybe Al Seaver could probably get some good information out of there.
Well, as I say, this is most of the programs, and not the results. They're just having a couple results in there. But if I can find some results at home, I'll get with you on that.
Okay.
But anyway, those are the kind of things that and
So you were one of the hard-working people then?
Yeah, I was the Dick Green of long ago.
Sounds like it. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, well, I don't envy Dick for all the work that he has to do. I can appreciate what's involved in it.
And Carl Schleider does that pretty much for the anglers, I guess. He tries to keep track of all of their records, which is also a big job.
So all those things, the work I did on the Ensenada race and on the Marina Del Rey race, I consider to be things that I consider to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that. But like a lot of people here, why the real highlight was helping run the Louis Vuitton in '92 and '95.
Now you were involved with that?
Yeah, I had the best job on going. I was an umpire boat driver.
Yeah.
And that was both years. And that's just got to be the best job on the water.
Why?
Because you're right out there with the racers. You're right on their quarter all the time. Even when they're doing their mating dance and before the start, if they duck into the fleet in the crowd, you've got to duck right with them, and you've got to stay with them, and then you've got to get out of their way if they turn into you.
But
I know.
Which boat did we use for that?
Well, no, these were boats that were provided by various agencies here. I've got
They had Benettos and but
here's a picture.
But the umpire boat has to go fast.
Here's a picture of the Benettos that we use. Well, that's a Bayliner. We used this in '95. This is me with this. I'm driving, and this is a Norwegian woman who was one of the international umpires.
So you had someone on with you all the time?
Yeah, well, we were just, the drivers didn't really have any authority. These international umpires were the ones that were calling the shots.
You just got to watch the race.
Yeah, I got to watch the race from about 50 yards away from the sailboats, you know.
That would be a good job, really. Yeah.
And so
and you did it both races. Then.
Yeah, we had used the Benettos in '92, and we also had Grady Whites in '92, and I drove that more than the Benetto. The Benetto was a kind of a big boat like that, little awkward. The little Grady Whites moved real well.
Were you on the scene the day that Abraham Lincoln came in and created it?
Yep. I was.
Want to give me your version of that?
Well, it was. Could have been pretty scary because the Lincoln obviously takes a long while to stop something like that, and they really apparently were not very well versed on what was going on out there, and it was quite foggy. My understanding is that they were looking for an open spot so that they could launch helicopters, and so because they wanted to they had a group of people they wanted to get ashore, and they were looking for an open hole to punch through, there was a lot of communications on Channel 16 because we could hear them. They were blowing their foghorn, but they were moving, and there was all kinds of communication going on between the Coast Guard and the race committee, and trying to get a hold of the ship that was out there. And it did slow down, and it was coming very slow, but it did break through the fog, and it was sitting right on the pin end of the line. There wasn't more than about 200 yards distance from the pin end of the line to the carrier when it finally came to a dead stop.
And you were out there in your boat.
Well, I was driving one of the bayliners that day, and I was positioned near the pin end of the line because I was getting ready we were getting ready for a start. Obviously, we didn't have this. The first set of boats had already started, and they were about 15 minutes down the course by the time the carrier showed up. And there was a lot of discussion on Channel 16 about a working channel about what to do, and because you just don't start one of those things up and I believe that he had to actually back down a little bit in order to get turned away from the fleet. Now the race committee boat was sitting there with about 300 fathoms of wire out for their anchor, so they couldn't pick up and go very
That's
easily.
where Vince Cook was.
Vince was on that.
Yeah, and Jack Ferguson.
That was a little hairy.
It's good to get different people's perspective on that, because all of you were in different places. And
Yeah, well, that was all I could do was sit there and wait, Obviously, it got cleared up, or it got taken care of, but it was an embarrassing moment.
Yeah.
I've got a T-shirt at home that somebody from Silver Yacht Club made up when we sold a bunch of them to everybody. It had a picture of it had like characterization of the start of the race with the carrier sitting there, and they call it a late entry.
That's great. That's priceless. Hold on to that.
Oh yeah. I wear it once in a while when I feel good.
What other than you enjoyed your job? Were there other particular highlights of the Louis Vuitton time for you? I mean, things special that happened that will always be in your memory?
We had a lot of nice parties.
Good parties.
And in '95, we did get invited to the party out at Miramar. What a blast!
Yeah,
I'll never forget that.
That was fun. I was there.
You got that one too?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we didn't get invited to the one in '92. There was a little difference in the way the people who were running the volunteer organization pushed themselves. The people from Australia who ran it in '92 were a little timid about that sort of thing, and they didn't push to have the volunteers go to their party. But in '95 we had the expatriate American from Canada that was running things a lot. And well, actually, we still had the Aussie here.
I know who you
Reed?
mean.
No.
Oh, yes, that's one of the...
See, this was '92. It's we had We had Ernie Taylor and Dr. Reed and Taylor were running 92, 95. I think who it was, 95 was still here. One of them came back. But they were a little more assertive in 95, so we want the volunteers to go to that.
So you have some nice mementos
Oh yeah,
in your house.
I got one of these for each year. And then a letter from the chief umpires, because that was, the umpires were a separate organization, and we, even though we were volunteering from here, we were really sort of attached to the umpire group. They in 95 they even had offices in another building. They weren't even here. And
trying to keep separate and fair.
yeah, they wanted to make sure that they weren't hanging. Of course, since all of the challengers were from other countries, there really would have been nothing wrong with them staying here. But I think they felt more comfortable being somewhere else.
Well, that was certainly one of the high points of Southwestern's.
Oh yeah, that's got to be the. It doesn't get any better than that. You know, and I'm sure there's lots of things that take as much work or a lot more work.
Well, that was a monumental volunteer effort. I mean, you stop to think about the hours. It was incredible.
I know. I counted 40 days on the water during that period, and that's. I'm still working for a living, and trying to get off of all those times. It took some doing. I'm pretty fortunate. I've been working long enough that I get 5 weeks a year.
Oh, good.
Vacation, but I completely shot it in '95, and I haven't been up to a point where I've had any thing left anymore.
What other things, like, it sounds like you like parties and things. Do you and your wife do other? Were you active in the social life at all?
In the club?
Back when you began?
No, we did go to a few of the social events, but we're not real outgoing that way. Not that we don't like people here. That's not at all it. But we just are comfortable coming down here by ourselves. We come down quite frequently, but we don't. The party aspect of it is not something that's been real important for us.
And so your wife then hasn't had a whole lot of involvement with
Well, my wife is not as interested in. She's not interested in sailing at all. That just has. She might go on the boat once a year if we go out whale watching or something like that.
Yeah. So your Wednesday nights, you single hand?
No, I have a friend who I've been sailing with for about 20 years. A fellow named Bob Harrigan. He's a retired Navy and retired civil servant. He's sailed crewed for a lot of people over the years. And I met him when we were here. Oh, I guess about 19. It's been early 70s, somewhere along there. At the time, Dr. Mike Schley was a member here, and he joined here as a service member about the same time I came in, and he had a Cal 25, and we've been good buddies ever since. We probably see each other at least once a week. He lives not too far from me. But anyway, he had at the time he had a Countess Ketch, which is a 44-foot boat made on the East Coast by Pearson, and it was built primarily for working down the Bahamas. It was relatively shallow draft for a big boat. So it wouldn't go to weather worth a hoot. but he did like to sail, and he did like to race, and so we got in some long distance races with him, and Bob Harrigan and Jack Word and Larry Bunce, Larry Oliver. These are guys that are retired Navy personnel that were down at the Naval Sailing Club at the time. And Mike got them all together as a crew. And the crew was older than Mike was. Everyone in the crew was senior to Mike age-wise. But we made 3 races around Guadalupe Island. Let's see, the Balboa, Bahia Corinthian Yacht Club in Balboa sponsored the race for about 2 years. And this was in the, I believe in the late 70s. And then they dropped the race, and Mike was instrumental in getting Southwestern to run it from here for 1 or 2 years. Then Mike sold his boat and left the club, and I think that it was a lack of interest. It was a lot of work, and you know, Guadalupe Island's 100
It's a real challenge.
80 miles due south of here, and it's a tough race.
Yeah. His last name was Slime?
Schley, S-C-H-L-E-Y.
I've seen that name.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to spell.
Yeah, Mike is...
And the name of this race was the Guadalupe Island?
Island race, yeah.
And Bahia,
well, it started from Balboa, but it was the Bahia Corinthian Yacht Club up there.
that really ran it.
That ran it. Yeah, the first couple of years, they ran it. I don't remember whether it was, I guess it was an annual race. Anyway, there was 2 or 3 years up there, and then a couple of years down here.
Yeah.
And then
About
went south.
About which years might those?
Well, that would be, I'm thinking the late 70s, but I don't remember for sure. Yeah, I mean, it was...
That sounds like you had a fun crew and enjoyed that, huh?
Yeah. Well, we were a pretty senior group, but they
That means a lot of experience.
Yeah. Well, Larry, like I said, I think almost everybody in the crew was a retired Navy. Larry Bunce was a retired aviator, and Larry Oliver was a retired chief. Where I think he was in the fire control systems. Bob Harrigan was a retired fire control technician, and he worked many years up at NELC. And Jack Word was a retired boatswain's mate.
So there were a lot of cool heads there.
Yeah. You didn't have any trouble getting anybody up for watch. You know, they knew how to stand a watch. That was pretty good. Yeah. Larry Oliver brought along his accordion and his trumpet.
Oh.
He wasn't a very good trumpet player or accordion player, but he had a good time.
And it was entertainment. Huh?
Yeah.
Let's see. You were going to talk with me about the clubhouse.
Oh, the old clubhouse. Yeah. Well. The old clubhouse was really a nice place, nice comfortable little place. They ran it with, they had a one-person office. And when I was first joined, they had a gal named Billy there. She was about 5 foot tall, about 5 foot wide. She
Knew everything. Huh?
She consumed the office. Well, everything was in her head, you know. But she was pretty nice. Yeah, we had a fellow that would work the kitchen. He didn't have a full-time kitchen, so I don't know how. He probably was just retired and came in and worked a few hours for some dinners now and then. Only Bob, I think his name was. And then we had a nice little bar. The bar was about maybe a little bit longer than this room, not quite as wide. It went into the clubhouse, kind of made L shape, with the kitchen and the offices filling in it was a square building.
Yeah.
But there was, yeah, how could I forget the bartender's name? I spent a lot of time.
It'll come back to you, I'm sure. Yeah. Well, actually,
No,
we have an old picture.
Callahan. Paul Callahan was the bartender. He was a retired Navy chief, and he was a recovering alcoholic. I never saw him take a drink, but he said he used to really put it down when he was in the Navy. He did. He says, I finally got to the point, he says, I decided I was going to have to. I felt a lot better waking up than coming to.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. Well, we have a photo of that clubhouse, and so I can visualize as you're talking to me about it too.
It was a nice clubhouse, and we had
good times.
Good times in there. We co-owned it with the termites. And I think eventually the termites won. You go to there's a small meeting room, maybe half the size of this one, right behind the office space. And I've been in there on some various meetings at night, and you look over at the windowsill, and you can just see the sawdust just piling up on the windowsill as you're doing a meeting. It was a tough fight. So it would have gone if we hadn't taken it down.
Yeah. Everybody I've talked with, every single person I've interviewed who experienced that clubhouse remembers it and loved it and is so sorry that it had to change, because it was, change is inevitable.
Yeah, I think it's, I love the old clubhouse. I'm not sorry it's gone. I think the facility we have here is appropriate for what we are, and we should have something like this. I don't know whether we need anything anymore, but that's to be decided by other people, not my decision.
You never was interested particularly in getting involved with chairs and officers, or?
I was. I served on the board of directors for 2 years. Well, about a year and 7 months, something like that. I was a secretary. And I was the secretary's job. I think it's 1977 and 78. And in the middle of 1978, I had an opportunity to go to Japan for 6 months as part of my work, and I jumped at the chance. So I had to leave the secretary's job in about the middle of the year. And when I came back, I've never really picked up on going back into doing any work in the chairs. I definitely am not interested in never was interested in being Commodore. That's a job for. There are people who are good at doing that, and there's people who wouldn't be good, and I know I wouldn't be good at it. So I'm too much of a technician. I like to get down and do things with nuts and bolts and stuff like that. And you have to have a little broader picture to do the job than I have. So I wouldn't mind going back and doing things on the board of directors level again, but I'm still working, and I can't really spend the time that it takes. It takes an awful lot of time.
So you've had about 3 different careers. You were the Merchant Marines and the Navy.
And then I worked for General Dynamics Astronautics for 6 years, and then I went back to Merchant Marine for a little while in 82, I guess it was. Last time I sailed on my license was 1983, I guess it was. 82. No, beg your pardon. Last time I sailed on my license was 62. And then I came back ashore, and I just happened to stumble into a job in software,
That's what you're doing now?
That's what I'm doing now. I'm a systems engineer.
I
for-
thought
for
you must
software.
be when you said you could work out of your house.
Yeah, well, all our work has been done under contract to the Navy. Most of it up here at the top of the hill.
In the bunkers,
Yeah, or down in the, they've got
in the NOS place.
in the Nosk
Yeah.
area. And I worked. So I've been at that for 36 years now.
So how many years have you worked or been in the Merchant Marine or the
Oh,
Navy altogether?
Oh, you mean? Well, I started. I've been employed part-time at least since I've been 9 years old. So, but I had a couple of years in the Merchant Marine, a couple of years active duty in the Navy, and about 8 years with General Dynamics.
Where were you in the Navy?
I was assigned to an AKA that was based here in San Diego. And then while I was civilian, after I got out of the Navy, after I got off active duty, I stayed in the reserve, and I maintained the reserve activities until 1982, I guess it was. I retired as a captain in the reserve. So I did 2 years active duty in the Navy and 22 in the reserve. So I've had a lot of experiences. I couldn't, if I dropped dead today, I couldn't complain.
Well, it doesn't sound like you're going to, because you're still active in everything.
Mm-hmm.
Are you planning to retire ever?
I plan to, but I don't know when. I figure, the way I look at it, one of these days we're just gonna run out of contracts or something like that, and the boss will say, "Well, that's it, folks. We're a field activity." I work for. Well, the company I work for now is Lockheed Martin, 130,000 employees. But I started off with in this stint. I started off with Remington Rand Univac at the time, and then Burroughs and Univac, Sperry bought out Univac, and it was Sperry Univac for a while, and then Sperry Corporation. Then Sperry and Burroughs merged, and we became an outfit called Paramax, and then Loral bought the defense division of that I was with, so that was with Loral for a while. And then Lockheed Martin bought out the defense division of Loral.
You don't even worry who you work for anymore. It's too confusing.
All I know is my paycheck comes once a week.
That's right. Well, it's not, some people, retirement is, not, and you get 5 weeks off, so you can take off on trips if you want to. Do you have any hobbies other than sailing and working hard?
Not really, no.
Travel at all?
We do travel, yeah. I've done a lot of traveling with my work. Recently, I haven't been able to do anymore, but I had that 1 6-month stint in Japan, which I really loved, and then I went back again in '84 and '85 for a year and worked a year, pretty much the same job over there, and we used to go out and deliver programs during the Vietnam War. We'd go out and deliver programs out to Yankee Station and get to the Philippines, Hong Kong, places like that.
So that engineering knowledge that you learned a long time ago certainly has paid off through the years, hasn't it?
Oh yeah. There's just nothing like a good solid engineering or hard sciences education.
And
I was really fortunate. I got to go to the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and they gave you a good practical education there.
And that helped you be able to transition into the world of computers then?
Well, let me put it this way. We had some very interesting instructors back then. We had this one guy called Salty O'Hara, and he was salty was the right word for him. And when somebody be having a little bit of trouble with what they were doing, like Salty was famous for saying, Christ on a raft, lad. You're a King's Pointer. You can do anything.
Yeah, kept everybody thinking that.
You just kind of get that kind of an attitude. I can do anything. And that's and maybe it's not true, but the attitude is what counts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had a very, very interesting time.
Yeah.
Getting back to the club for a few minutes. Well, it's fun talking with you about your life. It's great. Are there things about the club, if someone were to ask you, what would you like to see different here? Is there anything that comes to mind that you think would make it a greater place than it is?
Oh, nothing significant as far as I can see. I know that there's, when we talk about the plant that we have here, why there's always ideas that are floating around about what you might do to the plant, and I guess we've got commitments that we're going to have to spend some money, capital investment-wise. And I will be interested in participating in any informational meetings that come along that line, because I have heard some suggestions that I would like to say, hey fellas, let's not do that. And fellas and girls, let's not do that. Or some that's maybe they got something going for it. But there's nothing that really stands out. I mean, I don't want a swimming pool. I mean, it would have been nice if we'd had a swimming pool here when my kids growing up. My kids would never come down here because there was nothing for them.
They weren't. You didn't get any of them hooked on racing or sailing or anything.
Well, my oldest daughter does sail a little bit with me now and then, but and she's the one that belongs over to San Diego Yacht Club. But she joined over there for social reasons, for business reasons. It wasn't because she wanted to do anything over there particularly. But when my kids were growing up, our junior program here was very very anemic, to say the least. Certainly nothing like what we have today. And I'm glad to see this kind of program here.
Because it gets their interest and keeps them here.
Yeah. But as far as the plans, do we want a second floor? I don't want a second floor. I mean, but maybe if enough people want second floor, and you can stand the screaming and wailing that you're going to come from the people across the way here. More power to you.
Yeah, there are a lot of problems with all of that. But you're going to be there for some input.
Oh yeah. I can be vociferous when I want to be, and that. Maybe that's why I'd never make a good Commodore.
Well,
ask Bob Pavey.
It sounds like you've certainly done your share already. And like you said, like with Roy, some people have put in so much time and energy, and so it's only fair that they get a time off.
Yeah, no, I know that the people who really get burned out or have a tendency to get burned out are the ones who actually do go through the chairs, and you can see I'm surprised at seeing all of the staff Commodores that we have around here that show up and do things, and I'm because if I'd have gone through what some of them have gone through, I'd have probably rolled over and died. And so these guys and they're still active. They're still doing it.
In fact, Jim Lonergan's coming back for another round. So.
Yeah, I think he'll be. We've had one other Commodore that's been around twice, and that's John Tanner. He was Commodore twice.
And Elliot Pohl, I think.
Oh, that was way before my time.
Yeah, that was way back there. Yeah, I think he was.
John had already been Commodore twice by the time I got here. So that's a long while ago. But some of my memories are getting weaker and weaker, but I think more about what I did in the 60s and the 70s, and in the 80s and 90s I pretty well didn't do anything.
Well, you had your active time. Most of us do. You can't keep this up. I mean, if you're going to belong to a club for 40 years, you can't sustain that kind of energy level. And it's always, there are always other people coming in to have their turn.
Yeah, and that's good. I'm glad to see that there are people here that want to do this.
Is there anything else, any other particular memories, anything that I haven't asked that you had thought of that you wanted to share at all? It doesn't matter on what topic?
Well, there was on the distaff side, just to show that we're all human here. I think I can't remember the exact time frame of it because it was because I had a tendency to go off on business, and I'd be gone for 6-8 weeks or something like that, and I'd come back and a lot of things had changed. I don't think it had to do with the time I went to Japan, which would have made it 78. Might have been there, but somehow I think it was earlier than that, about 70 in the early 70s. I'd be gone for 6-8 months, 6-8 weeks at a time. And I remember at one point I'd come back after a rather long period, and my wife and I went to we did go to a party. I think it was a Christmas party or something like that, and somehow I happened to be dancing with Joyce Disraeli. And
who loves to dance.
Yeah, and she said, "Gee, I haven't seen you in a long while." She says, "How's your wife?" Or shouldn't I ask that? And I thought that was the strangest statement for somebody to make, because I said, "Oh, she's fine. She's right over here, Oh, thank goodness. Well, it turns out, while I was gone, they'd had some rather bad connections between certain husbands and certain wives at this club.
And people were doing a little swapping.
There was some swapping going on.
That was the period when swapping was happening.
Well, I gather that, I don't want to mention any names because some of the participants are still here, but it was during, that was what it was all about, and this one person, this one female, had apparently tried to make moves on at least 2, maybe 3 other husbands in the club, and was successful with one.
And so Joyce was glad that everything was fine.
So she was, and it was all in the sale group there. And she was, she's, maybe I shouldn't have asked that. Maybe they're part of this crowd, because we're in a very big organization.
There's something like that sort of affects everybody. You don't know who to.
Well, fortunately, I was gone, and I wasn't even around for the blood.
It's like there were some parties, I guess they had, where girls came out of cakes and
I remember
they called them smokers.
We used to have some it was about pre-Christmas or something like that. Why they'd have one of those going, and I think Mike Schleif was responsible for putting a couple of those together, and they were kind of fun.
And this is men only, and
they were rather sedate by a lot of standards. So I don't think anybody had anything to worry about. But we put up paper on the windows and all that sort of stuff. But the cake activity was Hazel Doman. She and Mike Schleif put that one together too. That was for the 25th.
50th birthday.
The 50th, something like that.
Yeah, I have pictures of her coming out of the cake.
And we needed a fire extinguisher too. We just about burnt the place down. But that was a real activity. Of course, Hazel loved it. Did
you know her very well?
I knew her, I think, as well as I know anybody here. She's very, very outgoing, very, very gregarious, and always wanted to. If she saw somebody she didn't know, she'd go up and ask them, introduce herself, and welcome them, and she was just very, very gracious and outgoing that way.
It's actually, she's the reason I'm doing this, because we were in a meeting, I was in a meeting with Dick Disraeli the day after she passed away, and I said, did anyone ever record her? And of course, nobody had, and so we're trying to not let that happen.
Yeah, she was really a lot of glue around here.
Yeah, she was, yeah. I remember her when we first joined, she was like you said.
Yeah, we probably won't see many people like that again. That takes, just
A
certain
special
people can
kind
do
of
that.
person, and also at the times, and she was number one, so she considered herself, I think, Sylvia Bates, Sylvia was interviewed, and she said that Hazel really felt like, she should greet everyone. She enjoyed
took it
it.
very seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, the numbering scheme is
What number are you now?
5.
5. That's what Roy told me. He said you were number 5.
Yeah. But I obviously, when you get up that far, why, you gotta wait for somebody to die. And we don't want any of that.
No. It would be your friend John Tanner.
Tanner's number 1, Disraeli's 2, Ed Sprague is 3, I think. And then Glenn Johnson's wife is a regular, is 4. And I'm
You're
5.
Yeah. Well, we want all of you to stay here.
Well, I'm going to stay as long as, unless the market dumps again like it did today, maybe we won't be able to stay here.
Well, I so appreciate your
Okay, well,
meeting
fine.
and talking with me, and we have a good tape here, and